So what if cars could talk to each other? Well, very soon through vehicle-to-vehicle technology, cars will exchange vital information with each other like position and speed to avoid crashes and ease traffic congestion. But who else is listening? Will the NSA be snooping on your car and your car's car friends? Will your car be arrested and charged with war crimes? Will your car be sent away never to see you and your gas station credit card ever again, even though you're still making payments? I don't know, but it's everything you need to know about a technology shift that will change the way you drive and crash or don't. And that's today on After Drive. So nearly every car maker has been developing a version of vehicle-to-vehicle tech, that's V2V. Now, the US government is almost ready to approve V2V for passenger cars. So what do you need to know in the new world of cars talking to each other behind your back? Andrew Del-Colle from Popular Mechanics Magazine, of course, back with us, and JF Musial, executive producer of Drive and technology wonk.
Thanks.
Well, I'm just giving you the props that you deserve. So cars talking to each other. What exactly are we talking about when we say cars will be having conversations with each other?
Well, what we're saying is that they'll use a transponder in the car, and it will be able to it'll transmit at 5.9 megahertz the signal to another car who also has a transponder, or that will also have a transponder. And they'll be able to relay information like location, speed, whether you're hitting the brakes, whether you're putting on your turn signal,
right.
And then they'll be able to issue warnings to each other because they'll know actually what each other's doing. Really,
that's really it's cool and sort of weird and scary at the same time. So last time you were here, we talked about autonomous cars, cars driving themselves. But is this kind of a link to that world of cars just driving themselves?
Yeah, I mean, some would argue that it's really necessary, actually, if we're ever going to get to the point where we have a truly autonomous car. Because if you think about it, there are radars and sensors and like the ultrasonic sensors, everything that we use right now for the current safety systems. They're all great, but they only work with line of sight.
Yes.
A big thing with V2V is that it works without line of sight. So I've been in one of these cars before, and we had a blind turn, and I went to make a right, and it could sense that I was putting on the signal that I'd come off the brake, and it sensed the other car coming, and then it issued the warning. Nothing else right now would be able to do that.
Yeah.
So that would be that, and the fact that it would help the cars work together in, if you like say an HOV lane instead of a V2V lane, they could actually kind of.
So you mean ease congestion by cars kind of knowing that they're there, so they're not going to. But I mean,
that's a far way away. That's way off.
JF, you brought this up. This is actually your topic. You got interested in this.
I think it mostly stems from the aviation industry, is why I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, I know you're a plane
I am a plane nerd, yeah. So when you look at, in the early 90s, we implemented, the FAA and then the European Union and India actually was part of the coalition that started this, the traffic collision avoidance system for all commercial air travel for planes carrying more than 30 people. And since like 92 or 93, every plane in commercial air travel can communicate with each other. Obviously providing location being altitude, lat long, but also descent or anything that is going on within the cockpit is communicated. Much like, you look at these systems and it's exactly what we're talking here with the automotive industry. So it's not far-fetched. And if you look at the automotive industry, we've taken a lot from the aviation industry. You look at the Concorde, you look at with carbon ceramic brakes, you look at also Kevlar construction, implementing Kevlar into bodies and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So it's not a far-fetched situation where we can see these technologies, and it's actually fairly simple. And then we were just talking before the show, you look at Trapster, the app on your phone that tells you whether or not there's a cop down the road. We already have sort of vehicle-to-vehicle communication already through our phones.
That's interesting because the phone is basically a transponder and receiver, right? It's the same kind of thing, but we're talking different modes of communication, right? So These use actual spectrum, like you were saying,
Yeah.
the radio spectrum at 5.9 megahertz. I don't know what was there before. Is that something that they freed up for
Yeah,
this?
they that is exclusively just for vehicle-to-vehicle communication, or like vehicle safety communication. It's been like that for 15 years or something like
Well,
that.
this is so it's actually it's direct car to car. So Trapster is actually not car to car. It's car to infrastructure, car to cloud, back to car.
Oh, got it. Right.
So
Well, when
yeah,
you
sorry, yeah.
Right, exactly. So so this is actually quicker. Well, that can, because the thing is, Trapster doesn't need to be so quick, but this actually does need to
Correct.
be.
It's instantaneous.
Instantaneous. It has
Yeah.
to be like milliseconds.
Yeah.
Because if a car is coming around the corner and you're at a perpendicular to it and you can't see it, because line of sight, as we were saying, is the thing. So talking about the FCC spectrum, brings to mind government intervention or government participation in this kind of thing. And actually, a couple of weeks ago, NHTSA and the DOT started sending out press releases about how they were going to go through the process of approving this. What's that about right now?
Well, so they've been actually, NHTSA and DOT have been working with car makers for a while now on kind of a program, an exploratory program out in Ann Arbor. I think it's like 3,000 vehicles or something like that. And everybody from GM and Ford and other car makers are involved. And so they've been exploring the idea for a long time. Now it seems like they're open to not allowing it, mandating it. But the thing is, like, it takes a long time to mandate something for NHTSA, for any government, any regulation to happen. So it would actually require more testing again, and it would also require a lot more time for drafting a real bill. So, there's plenty of people that are speculative whether we would actually even see this, at least through a government mandate right now.
Right.
And there's plenty of people also, do car makers really want to be forced to put this in? I mean, the price that they're talking about is $100 to $200 per device, but there's plenty of reason to think that it could be more expensive than that. And then also, how will people react just to know that something is being mandated to go into their car?
And that's an important thing, because after the NSA debacle, we'll say, people are not really in the mood to let the government do more to look in on them. So, or at least right now in the climate that it is. So thinking about that in terms of whether there would be a mandate to this, seems like that probably wouldn't be something that would go through.
I worry less about it in terms of actually knowing what it would mean, because we already have event data recorders in our cars. We carry around our cell phones, which relay all this information anyway to people. Most of the information you could get from this transponder, you could get other ways.
Yeah, the data's already there.
The data's there. It's just the idea of the government forcing its way into your car.
When you think about this, this is an incremental step that will happen. Without a doubt, it will happen.
Right.
OBD2, the data is already there. We already have speeds. We already have all this information. It's just about communicating that information. And when you think about it, let's take this a step further. This is already happening in the automotive space when you look at motorsports.
Right.
You look at, so Formula One, it is not car to car, or actually even with Tudor, it's not car to car, it's car to race control back to car for yellow flags, for blue flags, and not only that, with Motec, getting data off the car in terms of the engineers looking at the strategy and things of that nature. So this is already in the industry. It's just a matter of making an incremental step to passenger cars.
Yeah.
Now, and you were speaking before, commercial trucks and vehicles, it's actually fairly simple to be done right now.
Well, it not only would it be simple, but it would make the most sense as being the next step, possibly, because to get into large volume passenger vehicles, obviously NHTSA would have to, and then DOT would have to come up with all this new regulation. But they have the ability right now to regulate within the commercial space almost immediately.
Right.
And so they could say, hey, we want to see this in vehicles, and that would also give an example to people of why this technology could be good. They could see it in real world situations, save lives possibly, which would be this value added to them, as opposed to being forced to have something in their car and maybe pay a little extra, because car makers are going to pass off that
Sure.
that extra money to us.
Yeah.
they can see the value in it first, and it would be more market driven.
So now, in your reporting of this, have you seen or have you come across any research on what the network effect would be? Like, how many cars would have to be implemented with this stuff for you to really see the benefits happen?
I've talked with people about it, and no one's really speculated, exactly how many. Because also you have to think about how long that would take. I mean, even if you implemented something like that right now, right? Mm-hmm. What is it? The full fleet turnover, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is. Granted, there are possibilities that you could do off-the-shelf devices for older cars and kind of put them in. But to get a full network effects, that tipping point where you really see the benefits, I have no
when's the
idea.
last time you drove a car without an airbag? You look at that comparison. Look at you know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, other than 3 weeks ago, but it was, no. I mean, but you're right. The average person wouldn't have driven a car without an airbag in about 20 years.
Exactly.
Yes.
All right. And I'm going to use another analogy, and this is getting back to implementing any type of technology. Look at electric cars right now. The plugs are not standardized. It's the manufacturers that are taking charge of actually saying, I know, it's not all of them at this point.
Taking charge, I said. No, it's all right.
You like that pun. I didn't mean it, but thank you for that.
My bad.
The government still hasn't, and correct me if I'm wrong, the government still has not set a regulation for standardizing the plugs that go for Tesla, for any of the vehicles. So is this really going to be something that we'll see the manufacturers take charge of, or the government take charge of?
Well, here's an interesting thing. So I heard a statistic recently that 1.2 seconds is the reaction time for most people, and that's the average because most people are distracted when they're driving, in whatever way they are. In other words, maybe they're just sort of distracted because they're thinking about something else while they're driving, or maybe they're checking the radio, or they're doing something else, or texting when they shouldn't be, or whatever. But if the reaction time of a person is 1.2 seconds, the reaction time between sensors and software in a machine right now in certain systems are like 0.5 seconds to detect something and like another 50 milliseconds to react. So the reaction time from a car's systems are much quicker. You combine that with this kind of thing, and you could probably stop maybe 76% of accidents. This is the other statistic, it was 76% of accidents. That would be huge for the insurance industry. And there may be the commercial implication of this thing.
That could be. When I was when I was in Warren, Michigan, at the GM Center and at the technical center there, and we were doing a ride around the V2V cars. Two things to that actually. One is that I rode around one of the cars, or in a couple of the cars, that they talked to each other and they issued warnings, haptic, and then auditory, and then also flashing lights, but. They said there that they have a few of their vehicles, a couple of the caddies, that actually had the V2V hooked up to like the adaptive cruise control and everything, so that it could do the self-braking.
Yeah.
And they said it works really well. So definitely you could see it saving lives without a doubt. And one of the things that he said could be an incentive for car makers to actually want to do this would be, offer an extra crash rating star, maybe.
Sure.
Or something like that.
Or
Now,
points off your insurance, or dollars off.
I mean, if you look at a lot of these technologies, it's easy to see how a lot of it could be driven by insurance. I mean, the day when it actually becomes more responsible in terms of insurance to have this technology in your car and get the benefits of it. That'll be enough to push people.
So I also think that you can take it even a step further. So there are something like 30,000 deaths in America from roadway traffic incidents. Per year. You're speaking on the reaction front. But what about on preventing accidents? And okay, so take for example, there's a piece of roadway, and you know that when it gets cold, this part of the roadway ices up first. So you can see that by if you had commercial trucks to begin with, right? You see that at this point in the road, in this part of the journey, the trucks at this speed, when the temperature is at this rating, all information we have, traction control goes off, right? At this exact moment. That tells you that there may be ice or there's an obstruction or something. you then can get into a phase where you're preventing incidents before they even happen on a routine basis by looking at this location right here is where things happen.
So you're like Tom Cruise.
I don't. Thanks,
I'm
asshole.
just saying. No, but I mean, if we're predicting, we're predicting accidents before they happen, or you're stopping accidents from happening before they happen.
Exactly.
Well,
It's pre-accident.
You can get this data from the commercial vehicle side, which then can say, okay, look at what we're getting from this small sample set of information, these vehicles. Think of what we can get even further from that.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you another step beyond that, right? So if you say you somehow manage to get V2V communication in all GM cars, along with the fact that they all already have OnStar capability, which that was like the biggest boon ever for GM, because essentially when everybody had to go digital back in like 2008 or whatever it was, it gave them the world's biggest cloud network for cars, right? And so really that could become, along with the V2V, along with the cloud, it becomes almost like Waze, that app, you know, where you can relay the information, ice up on roads where cops are. I mean, they wouldn't do it for that, but yeah,
But that
we wouldn't mind it if it did.
no, and there's another commercial application though too that could make that work.
Right,
That
people would see
pay
the
for.
value added.
So those are all pretty positive things coming out of V2V, but what about some of the negatives? Because a lot of people have been talking about privacy issues with this, whether the government is going to be spying on where your car is, what your car is doing.
Again, I don't really worry about that. I mean, yes, they could, but like we referenced earlier in the NSA style, you know, where it's completely illegal. They could go in and get the information later, but also like we covered, that information's there to be gotten anyway already.
Easy pass.
Yeah.
How many
We were
times-
talking about it. This is a great example of
How many
where,
times have you killed somebody and then gone, and gone across New Jersey, and then they end up, you're like, oh, how'd you find me? And they're like, well, you have Easy Pass. And it's
Well,
like,
take for example, Easy Pass between a short distance, right? And you speed between those two. If you know the time difference between those, and you know the length, you know the speed, right?
Right.
So there are countless times where I could be charged with speeding between two toll booths, just based off the average speed between those points. They have that information. I've never gotten a ticket.
Right.
So it's.
And that is the one. I mean, the one concern that people will bring up when you really get into the potential of this is, and although most people would call it a pipe dream, if we did actually have vehicle-to-infrastructure communication and we had smart stoplights, then you could kind of get into the concerns of, oh, okay, every time I cut it a little close, am I going to get a ticket?
Right.
Can they? Because then it's an enforceable Easy Pass.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Because it's government run. So. So that's a situation.
Well, the other thing, though, is, people worry about the government, but the other thing to consider is that if the commercial application or the commercial killer app of this thing is insurance, then really you could get nailed if the insurance company is monitoring your. I mean, they're already kind of doing
That's
this
the
with
bigger concern.
black box stuff, right? But
That's the bigger concern.
yeah, but all that's in the black box stuff
Yeah,
already.
but not everybody has the black box
Right.
yet. So, of course, as people get used to giving the insurance company all their information to get cheaper rates, I mean, maybe they'll start with giving you a cheaper rate, but eventually it's kind of them watching over every minute of your drive.
Right now, you can get a cheaper rate if you actually provide that OBD2 data. I think Allstate does that, where you plug in some information. You get the cheaper rate. Soon, it's going to be a premium if you don't give that data, or rather, it's going to be more expensive if you don't give that data. I think that's where the concern is if, okay, we're being put in a position where there are only so many insurance providers out there.
And if you don't tell your insurance company you put in that extra large turbo, right? So you're paying the naturally aspirated rate.
Yeah, but wouldn't you love to also be able to say, no, actually, I did put on my left signal indicator, and he came out of nowhere at 120.
Exactly.
Strong
Instead
point.
of it being
Strong
a no-fault incident, there can be proven cases where you could benefit from something like this as a consumer.
Right.
My concern, I think, and I'm going to go back to the aviation industry, is actually making sure that the driver is still fully a part of the decision-making process, in the sense of, okay, in '88 with the Airbus A320, during an air show, a plane flew right into the trees because they did a low pass and they couldn't disengage the autopilot system. It thought it was landing, it wasn't, it crashed, right?
Yeah, that was wasn't that the demonstration for that plane?
It was the third A320 ever built.
I remember that. I saw that on YouTube.
Yeah, and then of course there's the Air France 447 crash of the Atlantic, where you had conflicting inputs by the pilot, and there's too much going on, and they didn't override the system initially, right? I think that's where you get into the concern where, okay, if you've got vehicle-to-vehicle communication, and you have someone stopping short in fog, right? 9 times out of 10, you want the decision to have the vehicle brake for you. And we have that already with Mercedes and some of these, and Volvo does that as well.
Yeah.
But what about those times where you're dependent on it, and in the perfect example where Volvo embarrassed themselves, where you're depending on that system and then you crash.
Right, during the demonstration.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yes. So,
well, that's true. But then again, you just said fog. When was the last time, it wasn't that long ago, that there was like a 75-car pileup somewhere?
Pennsylvania.
2
weeks ago, yeah.
Because of smoke or fog or something.
Yep.
I mean, this would completely eliminate that kind of stuff.
Assuming that the system is also connected to the brakes and everything, so it'll self-brake for you.
Right.
I mean, again,
That's true, yeah.
I mean, there's the semi-autonomous safety systems, and then there would be V2V, and whether or not they're connected at first. But even if exactly. I mean, even with V2V though, there is the potential for people to become almost desensitized to the driving experience because
that's what I worry about.
Yeah, for the same reason that you don't. It's terrible to admit, but you also don't always turn around and check now if you have blind spot detection or if you have rear camera.
Right.
Because then you just have a giant screen that just shows you what's back there. And
so you never have
always
to turn
doing
your
that,
head. Yeah, right.
So if you get to the point where with V2V, if you know as soon as you heard your left turn indicator, it'll let you know if someone's coming up behind you. Will that make you a lazier driver? And that is a legitimate concern.
Yeah.
Back to planes, again, we haven't had a major air incident since 447, right?
Right.
And deaths in the aviation industry have drastically decreased, right? And I think it also comes down to the technology helping, but then as a pilot, you're trained to look at the horizon, then look at your instruments, and depend on both. Not depend on one or just only, if you only care about the instruments, you're going to get the false sense of security, and then things will go wrong. And
so
that's what my concern is. You can't be dependent on this, and as consumers, we want what's easiest because let's face it, most people care about what they're going to do once they get to the location, not how they're going to get there. Right.
So at least for now, you still have to be a driver, and until we get to the point where truck cars are driving themselves, but even then,
you still need to be an
driver.
Yeah, you still have to, because I've also been playing situations where I still do the turn, but sometimes they don't always pick it up.
Yeah.
And so you have to be cognizant of that.
Right. All right. So what's the timeline for this? I always ask you this, like at the end of whatever we're talking about. Okay. Well, when the hell is this going to happen?
When can I buy this?
I mean, again,
when will they take my money?
I don't know. I definitely don't think we're going to see the mandate even happen in the next 5 years. I think it's going to take another 5 years of testing on top of it to actually make the real regulations. But who knows? But maybe 10 years you'd see it happen.
Really?
I think manufacturers will start implementing it before.
Exactly.
Government
Again, it's nothing really substantive actually came out. If you actually read what they said, it's like, we're going to keep looking into it.
They just
and we
mentioned
might,
it, so now we're all talking about it.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I mean, who knows what the timeline is for them to get anything done? Like I've said, they've already been doing it for 15 years testing.
But automakers might add it as a way to bring their existing detection and safety implementation.
It's also another option to check off when you're purchasing a car, and you're always looking for that competitive advantage. And if you're providing them this system, of course, you don't have the sample set.
Right.
But the more and more that picks up, take for example Volkswagen. As a company, not just the one brand, implemented this and had an option on all their cars.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
But again,
I know.
Do you want to pony up that money?
Exactly. Yeah.
Without there being the incentive to.
If they bundle it with something else, that might be cool. I mean, they'll have to. The marketing
part of the
guys
entire safety suite.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I love the fact looking at Formula One where they have lights on their dash, or even in sports car racing, lights on the dash to tell them caution ahead. They're not hearing it. It's a visual indication. There's a yellow flag ahead of them.
Yeah.
That's that's enough in my mind in terms of saving lives.
Cool. Saving lives here on Afterdrive. That's our purpose. Also,
no, it's not.
No, it's not a purpose. It's just to talk about cars. Andrew Del-Colle from Popular Mechanics. Good to see you. JF Musial.
Am I supposed to?
Good to see you again. Yeah, we can do the awkward shake. And that's Afterdrive for today. And we will see you guys next week with another bunch of stuff to talk about. So we'll see you then. So ADC, what do you got going on? At Popular Mechanics.
Just wrapped up a big story on trying to figure out what exactly this whole Google, Android, and Apple coming to your dash.
Yeah, what the hell is that about?
Everybody kind of immediately at CES when Google announced that Android was coming to the dash,
right.
Everybody automatically made it into this. It's Apple versus Google war.
Right.
And it's not quite as
well, because Apple's got this consortium, right, of automakers.
Right,
that are coming
they have
together to,
exactly, and there's crossover. So you have the Open Automotive Alliance, which is Google's, and then you have I don't think they have a name for it for iOS in the car, but there's other people signed on to do iOS in the car, and a couple actually are on both teams. But it's not necessarily even teams. You can have both systems in a car. Mm-hmm. You don't have to choose one over the other. Apple is approaching the car very much in the same way that they approach everything else, which is that it's very closed. It's
right.
Apple controlled.
Yeah, exactly.
And Google with Android is approaching it entirely like they approach everything. So they're going to let anybody use Android as an actual OS for the car,
right.
which is huge for a lot of reasons, mainly because one major problem with infotainment systems and the reason why people get frustrated with them is app developers have a very hard time having to develop a new app every time for all the different proprietary systems.
Right.
With one of the larger, it gets expensive, and it's not always optimized.
Right.
So if everybody can be at least playing with Android's kind of framework, then that makes it a little bit easier.
And the other thing is, that part of the car is on a totally different development schedule than the rest of the car. I mean, if if a car takes 18 months at the least to develop, right? And we're in up to 5 years.
Yeah.
That's like 5 generations of handheld device or any other kind of thing like that.
Well, that was interesting too. I was just at the GLA drive, mm-hmm. and I was talking to the lead designer for the Mercedes-Benz GLA. Yeah. And I was talking to the lead designer, and it has the same external screen as the CLA, where it's not the embedded screen. It kind of sticks up above, right? Yeah. And we were talking about it, and I personally am not the biggest fan of it. It's just maybe I just takes getting used to it. But he actually said that one of the reasons they chose to do that was because whenever they do a refresh, mm-hmm. They're not married to a screen size in the car because everything changes so fast,
right?
That they basically can just make a larger screen if they want, or a smaller screen.
Because it does look kind of tacked on.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So rather than
because it is tacked on,
right.
because they can tack a new one on, because they can tack it off. Exactly. So that's one of the big reasons. It's tacky all over the place.
Well, right. Rather than build a really expensive shroud that snaps under and is smoothly recedes.
And plus, and just it limits you. Oh, it always has to be 5 by 7 inches. It always has to be whatever.
That's interesting. So you're giving up what you're giving up in swank kind of cool tech stuff. You just pull it up and put a new one on.
I thought it was it's the first time I had heard that, and there's no reason not to make that up. I mean, it makes complete sense to me. But back to the Apple thing real quick. What's interesting about the Apple iOS in the car is, have you seen some of the screen leaks that they've had? Online,
a couple of them.
So I mean, essentially that is you're importing that iOS into the car mm-hmm. from your phone still. So it lives kind of in the same place in the software stack as Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and programs like MirrorLink, which can also kind of mirror your phone screen, only modified for safety standards in the car. Mm-hmm. That's how iOS in the car could come in. So ostensibly, you could have both at the same time. It's just whether or not they'll say, "Oh, we don't want to be with the other,"
right? Exactly.
Which would not be smart.
Well, because a lot of people have always said, I mean, this goes back to once people started using smartphones in mass, right? What they want is to port around one device,
Right.
pop it in their car, and have all their stuff ready to go. And that hasn't been possible up until now. I mean, and actually, right now, it isn't completely
Kinda
possible yet.
It's just never going to happen.
Right.
Because car makers will never give up that screen
Right.
fully.
That's a lot of power to give
That's
up.
a lot of power to give up. They don't want somebody having control. I mean, those screens aren't just entertainment. They are also hooked up to your HVAC. They're hooked up to all the different dynamic driving modes and all that in a lot of new cars, right?
Yeah.
So they're not just going to hand that over to somebody. So they're not just going to let you just plug your phone in and, you know, go on your merry way. But more and more you're seeing just better integration happening and making decisions like that screen with Mercedes. I think that's really smart to moving forward know that they might have to make changes a lot faster than the normal 4 to 5 year cycle.
Cool.
So,
Good deal.
Yeah.
Anything else?
GLA,
Sorry, didn't lead you
that?
in. How is the GLA? Yes,
I liked it.
it's cool. I think it's
cool. I think they're going to sell a bunch of them.
I think you're probably right. It's like a really swank Subaru, kind of. I mean,
It
not
is. Well, I mean, it
not
feels
to
like
diss either one
it
of them,
feels like
but
they
I
just
like
hooked a CLA up to just like an air compressor and just pumped it up.
Well, you know, because we don't get the hatch here, right? We don't get. We would, you know,
Or either of the diesel engines.
or either the diesel engines, right? Exactly.
Which was kind of a bummer. The first car I drove, as soon as I got in, I was like, this is one of the diesels, isn't it? And they were like, yes. And I was like, we're not getting this, are we? And they're, no.
Oh man, we are not. Yeah, still diesel is.
So we'll just have the GLA 250 and then of course the AMG.
Yeah, diesel's still a hard business case to make right here.
Yeah, I guess it is. It's just, I don't.
I mean, they have the urea injection crap
Yeah.
that cuts down on NOx, right? I mean, that's the.
Well, and the new one in the Mazda, which is really interesting, is that in that Mazda 6, the diesel they'll be bringing over, it makes the particulates so small that you don't even need the urea.
Right.
Right? So, I mean, you're getting rid of like one of those steps for people that kind of is a barrier to them. Oh, there's this extra thing.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like, no,
Exactly. I mean, you know, again, the problem is the cost of diesel's gone up.
Right.
So it's not that big. I mean, but I think that eventually the case is going to be made for the driving experience of diesel, that people are just going to like it.
Right.
Just enjoy the torque.
Well, and that's one of the classic examples. A lot of people don't realize still that that's what they want.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I really want that passing power.
Right.
That's torque.
It's torque. It's torque. Turn it, grab the knob, turn it. That's torque.
To 11.
Turn it to 11. That's torque.
That's torque.
You're torquing it to 11.
Torque it to 11.
All right, good to see you, man. We'll have
Thank
you
you
on the
very
show again very soon, I'm sure.
Hope so.
ADC,
All right.
PM.
The
Boom.
1,000-mile-per-hour car.
1,000-mile-per-hour car.
The Bloodhound Gang made it.
By the way, yeah, the Bloodhound Gang. Right, exactly. What issue is it? March 2014. Cool. All right. See you. Peace.